It's the ultimate evolutionary contradiction. Music. A beast with massive teeth but tiny arms. Why did the Tyrannosaurus rex have such small arms? New research, music, suggests these arms weren't a mistake. They were a survival strategy. Today, we are solving the mystery of the T-Rex's music. Tiny arms along with other dinosaur secrets that were hidden in the fossil record until now. Why did the T-Rex have such small arms? Such small arms. There is a question that has haunted museums, classrooms, and dinner table conversations for decades. Why in the world did one of the biggest predators to ever live have such teeny tiny arms? This was a creature that could stretch nearly 40 feet from snout to tail while balancing several tons on its two muscular legs. It was a beast with a bite force that could puncture through flesh and bone like a hot needle through wax. But its two arms looked like they were added on as an afterthought, like someone put the wrong arms on the action figure, shrugged, and sent it down the assembly line anyway. Did the T-Rex really have such small arms? Yes, they did. If you saw a full-grown T-Rex today, its arms would be roughly the same length as yours, about 3 feet long. The reason they look so small is simply because they are attached to a 40-foot-long body. It's the equivalent of a 6-foot-tall human having arms that are only 5 inches long. To this day, I don't think there is an animal alive or extinct that has faced the amount of ridicule as the T-Rex. Let's be honest, the mockery has been relentless. Cartoons show T-Rex failing at basic household tasks like making a bed or folding laundry. Paleontology jokes circulate like fossilized memes. Let's face it, Music the T-Rex couldn't pass anything at the dinner table or take a selfie or type. It couldn't put on a hat or give a high five. No other animal in history has had arms quite so useless. But to get serious now, more than 100 years after Tyrannosaurus rex was first described, its arms remain a serious scientific problem. Not because they are small, but because they are small in a way that looks intentional. Mother Nature doesn't tend to give us body parts that we don't need. So music, what's the deal? This is the use it or lose it theory. As the T-Rex head got bigger and the bite force increased, then the T-Rex just needed its head to kill and eat. The arms weren't needed, so they became vestigial or leftover organs. But there is a problem with that. If the arms were just vestigial nubs, meaning they were floppy and weak because evolution was in the middle of getting rid of them entirely, the mystery would vanish. Vestigial limbs happen. Just ask the whales with floppy legs. Evolution does sometimes leave useless leftovers, like the outrageously long hairs that grow on your toenails for no other reason than to creep you out. But that is not what scientists see when they look at T-Rex fossils. The bones tell a more awkward yet much more interesting story. Those arms were short, but they were music, not weak. Far from it. Muscle scars etched into the limb bones of T-Rex. Music. Skeletons suggest that a full-grown Tyrannosaurus could curl more than 220 pounds with each arm. No, I don't think T-Rex hit the gym, but that's how strong its not-so-floppy arms were. However, dinosaur proportions are different. Music. When you scale that strength to an animal that weighed around 8 tons, it suddenly looks far less impressive. Paleontologist Thomas Holtz has pointed out that this would be like a 200-pound man bragging about curling to music 1/2 pound. So, not so tough. The point isn't whether the T-Rex was a gym bro, but whether its arms could actually do anything. And they could. They could move and the hands could grasp. They just weren't particularly strong relative to the body they were attached to. It is this bizarre mismatch, that fuels the arm debate today. Paleontologist Kevin Padian in 2022 proposed that Tyrannosaurus rex had small arms to avoid injury during cannibalistic or communal feeding. As T-Rex evolved, their arms shrank to prevent them from being bitten off accidentally or intentionally when multiple massive individuals gathered around a carcass. Paleontologists have found numerous bite marks on T-Rex fossils that were made by other T-Rexes. Music. Studies of fossilized bones indicate that T-Rex did indeed engage in cannibalism, likely as an opportunistic behavior where they scavenged the carcasses of their own kind. T-Rex had a huge head, and a long arm could accidentally get amputated and infected with all of the snapping and lunging. To add to the confusion, there is another new theory that the T-Rex did use their arms. Several Tyrannosaurus skeletons show clear signs of arm-related injuries. These are not vague cracks in the bones or post-mortem damage. These are healed stress fractures, the kind that only form when living bone is repeatedly pushed beyond its comfort and music zone. So, what the heck were T-Rexes doing that strained their arms so badly? Could they have been arm wrestling? In 2008, Kenneth Carpenter and Christine Lipkin examined the wishbones of Tyrannosaurus rex. The wishbone or fcula sits between the shoulder blades and connects the arms to the chest. In birds, the wishbone acts like a spring, music during flight. T-Rex obviously was not flying anywhere, but the bone was still there and still functional. So, what was a T-Rex music doing with a wishbone? Out of the 5 known Tyrannosaurus wishbones that Kenneth and Christine studied, Music 3 showed signs of injury that had healed while the animal was alive. It's proof that the arms were not just hanging there. They were used for something. But for what? Kenneth Carpenter argued that the injuries point to moments of extreme stress rather than steady everyday use. Something was happening occasionally that put enormous force on those limbs. And that actually does make sense. T-Rex had arms. They were weak. But sometimes its instincts probably kicked in and it tried to grab something. Something like a large, struggling animal that didn't want to be eaten. Perhaps T-Rex only used its arms in rare circumstances to try and hold on to its prey. But because its arms were so weak, they would be damaged by the struggle. And that's why there are scars on the wishbones. Let's imagine the scene together. A massive T-Rex lunges forward, jaws clamping down on an unsuspecting duck-billed dinosaur. The victim does not go quietly. Music. It thrashes, twists, and tries to escape. In those tense moments, even a short arm could be jammed against a moving body, wrenched backward, or forced to hold on longer than it should. The T-Rex's bones crack, its music tendons tear, but it kills its prey. When all was said and done, the T-Rex music must have been in substantial pain. Yet it survived, healed, and carried the evidence of its struggle, music, 260 million years into the future. Mystery solved. Only, the whole story isn't that simple. Juvenile T-Rexes complicate things by having proportionally longer arms than adults. Young individuals seem better equipped for forelimb use than their fully grown counterparts. Why do you suppose that is? One possibility is that juveniles may have relied more on their arms to handle a music prey, only to abandon that strategy as their heads and teeth grew absurdly large. So, as youngsters, they had actually functioning music. Arms to catch prey. But once their jaws became killing machines of their own, their arms weren't needed. So, they became redundant. There's one more theory I think you need to hear because it's kind of entertaining. Some researchers have suggested that the T-Rex's arms were used to help Tyrannosaurus push itself up off the ground after resting, music, or after falling over. I mean, think about it. What does a monster that weighs a few tons do when it tips over? It can't get itself upright with those giant legs, and it can't just lay on the ground waiting to be eaten. But two short arms could provide enough leverage to get back up again, almost like a little kickstand. It's something that sea turtles and penguins desperately wish they could do. And I have one more theory for you. Last one, I swear. Henry Fairfield Osborn, the paleontologist who named Tyrannosaurus rex in 1905, believed music. The stubby forelimbs played a role in mating. Scientists aren't 100% sure how T-Rex got it on, but it's safe to say a pair of gigantic music lizards trying to do the tango for two are going to have a hard time. The small arms could have helped stabilize the situation to make T-Rex juniors. And with that, I have another very interesting question for you. Did dinosaurs have two brains? For many years, there was a rumor about Dinosaur. Did dinosaurs have two brains? Brains going around. It's probably something that someone told you at some point in time, and now you are convinced it's true just because it's been in your head for so long. That little nugget of information is that dinosaurs had two brains. It's one of the most popular dinosaur myths out there, but the truth isn't that simple. The idea of dual-brain dinosaurs has been floating around for decades. It appears in old books, casual conversations, and pop culture. When you hear the myth, it usually goes something along the lines of, some dinosaurs were so large and their heads were so small that evolution gave them a second brain near their hips to manage the back half of the body. At face value, it might sound logical. When your body is that big, why not have two control centers? Lots of animals have more than one brain, or a neural network, you could say. Octopuses have a brain for each arm. So, a brontosaurus with two brains isn't that far-fetched, is it? I mean, yes, it kind of is. But you'll understand why scientists thought this in just a second. Stegosaurus is usually the main victim of this myth. Its head is famously small and its body famously not. From a distance, music. It looks like a dinosaur assembled by two different committees that never spoke to each other. How could such a large creature with such a small head manage? So, when early scientists noticed a large cavity in the vertebrae above its hips, the temptation was strong to fill it with a brain. Scientists thought maybe Stegosaurus was smarter behind music than a head. The origin of the idea can be traced back to the 1800s when paleontology was still finding its footing and girls weren't allowed. Yale paleontologist Charles Marsh was studying the sauropod Camaraosaurus when he noticed something strange. The neural canal, the hollow space that holds the spinal cord, music, expanded dramatically near the hips. In fact, it was larger than the cavity in the skull that held the actual music brain. Marsh found this intriguing. He must have thought himself quite the genius when in 1881 he, music, described a similar structure in Stegosaurus and referred to it as a posterior brain case. Once, music that phrase hit the shelves, the damage was done. The idea was out there, and it was too convincing to ignore. At the time, the explanation seemed reasonable. Sauropods and stegosaurs were enormous animals, with brains that looked underwhelming, music, when compared to their bulk. And everyone still assumed that a big brain meant big smarts. We know today that brain size doesn't seem to have much to do with actual intelligence. Just look at a parrot. Tiny brain, music, huge vocabulary. A second brain could help an animal the size of a spaceship coordinate their hind legs. It, music, could speed up signals while compensating for a long nervous system that stretched across hundreds of feet. Having 9 brains is what allows the octopus to independently control each limb. Unfortunately for all of those old-timey paleontologists, modern facts don't support this outdated myth. No dinosaur had two brains. Not Stegosaurus, not sauropods, not anyone. The confusion comes from mixing two related but very different anatomical features. The first is spinal cord expansion near the limbs. Many dinosaurs and many living animals have this trait. Where limbs attach to the body, the spinal cord often thickens. That means more music nervous tissue is devoted to controlling those limbs. This leaves a visible mark on the bones, enlarging the neural canal in that region. This is normal biology, not evidence of extra brains, like past scientists thought. Animals that rely heavily on certain limbs tend to have larger spinal expansions associated with them. In stegosaurs and sauropods, there is a distinct cavity in the vertebrae over the hips that does not match the usual pattern of spinal cord enlargement. Music. It is shaped differently. It appears in a limited group of dinosaurs, and it is too large to be explained by nerves alone. But it is not a brain case. The frustrating part is that scientists still don't know what that cavity held. It didn't hold a brain. Music. Something was definitely in there. Scientists just can't figure out what. One of the leading ideas draws on a comparison to birds. Modern birds have a structure in their hips called the glycogen body. This organ stores glycogen, an energy-rich substance that helps keep birds perky. Sauropod expert Matt Waddell has suggested that the mysterious cavity in dinosaur hips music may have held something similar. And why not? Scientists do not fully understand what the glycogen body does in birds. It might help with balance. It might act as an energy reserve. Might do something else entirely. If dinosaurs had a comparable music structure, its function would still be unclear, but it would make sense. After all, chickens are just modern dinosaurs. In the end, the myth of the double dinosaur brain collapses. But the mystery remains. How did dinosaurs sleep? It feels like such, how did dinosaurs sleep? A simple question, but it is proving to be one of the hardest to answer when it comes to dinosaur behavior. How did dinos standing up? Curled in a ball, hanging upside down from a branch like a bird? How did they do it? It is surprisingly hard to figure out how dinosaurs slept. Mostly because dinosaurs had a terrible habit of dying in inconvenient ways. Fossils are not gentle snapshots of everyday life in Dino Town. Fossils are more like crime scenes. Most dinosaur skeletons are preserved in what paleontologists call a death pose. Their bodies twisted, necks arched, and limbs flung into dramatic positions that suggest a very bad final afternoon. That posture tells us almost nothing about how an animal slept. It tells us how it died. If scientists want to know how dinosaurs slept, music, they need a fossilized dinosaur that was caught mid-nap. That means an animal that laid down, relaxed, tucked itself into music, a comfortable position, and then was buried so quickly that it never woke up. That combination of circumstances is rare enough to feel insulting. Still, against all the odds, a few dinosaurs were unlucky in exactly the right way. We have sleeping dinosaur fossils. According to paleontologist Scott Persons, a small number of recent discoveries have given researchers genuine clues about dinosaur sleep. These fossils are special because they were not crushed, scattered, or rearranged. They were buried suddenly, often by volcanic ash, preserving the animal exactly as it was in life, or more accurately, in sleep. Music. Scott Persons compares these fossils to the human fossils at Pompeii. The comparison is uncomfortable but also weirdly accurate. The animals, music, were frozen in peaceful positions, unaware of what was coming, like some of the Romans at Pompeii. In the case of these sleeping dinosaurs, their poses look awfully familiar. You can see limbs folded, necks tucked, tails curl inward. Every sleeping dinosaur fossil looks like any ordinary animal curled up and slumbering soundly. One of the best examples comes from Mongolia. It's a small alvarosaurid dinosaur preserved in a sleeping position. Alvarosaurids were roughly the size of today's flightless birds like emus with lightweight bodies and long legs. This particular specimen, Music, was curled tightly with its neck and tail wrapped around its body and its arms and legs folded underneath. It looks, according to Scott Personsons, extremely adorable. It's not a scientific term, but it does fit. The dinosaur was hunkered down in a way that suggests comfort. This Music animal chose that position and settled into it like your dog curled up on their bed. Though this story has a much worse ending, because soon after this animal shut their eyes, volcanic ash arrived with no interest in bedtime routines. And that was the end. Their sleeping position can tell us a lot more than you might think. Animals that sleep curled up are usually concerned with heat. Curling reduces exposed surface area and helps retain body warmth. This is common in animals that generate their own heat rather than relying on the environment to warm them up. Crocodiles and lizards often sleep sprawled out because they depend on external heat sources. Dinosaurs like the Alvarosaurid appear to have behaved differently. Their sleeping posture suggests they were holding on to internally generated heat, which aligns with the idea that many dinosaurs were warm-blooded bird cousins. But hold on a second. There were a lot of dinosaurs. These examples represent a tiny fraction of dinosaur diversity. Dinosaurs came in an absurd range of shapes and sizes. Some were small enough to fit under a desk. Others were the size of apartment buildings with necks. It would be strange if they all slept the same way. And that brings me to the dinosaurs so big, it seemed like they never slept. How did the massive, long-necked sauropods like Titanosaur sleep? Did they lie down? Did they curl up? Did they stand? These are serious physiological questions. A sauropod lying down would have to get back up, which is no small task when you weigh several tons. There's also the issue of blood flow. Modern giraffes, which are much smaller than sauropods but still impressively tall, sleep standing up with their necks extended. If they were to curl up tightly, blood pressure could overwhelm their brains and cause them to black out. It's possible that sauropods faced similar limitations. Standing might have been safer than lying down, even if it was less comfortable. There's also the question of vulnerability. A sleeping sauropod on the ground would have been a stationary target. Standing may have allowed faster response to danger even during rest. Then there are theropods, the behemoths who strolled around on two legs. For example, Tyrannosaurus rex. There is no direct evidence showing how T-Rex slept, but speculation is hotter than ever. Scott Persons has mentioned the idea that Tyrannosaurus may have used its large, Music pubic bone as a kind of kickstand, allowing the animal to rest without fully lying down. Of course, there is no hard data to support the kickstand theory, but it is the kind of biomechanical improvisation that evolution occasionally hands out. The image of the most famous predator in history propping itself up like a parked motorcycle is difficult not to love. And while I'm speaking of the T-Rex Music again, let's see if we can't find its voice next. What did the T-Rex sound like? Imagine snorts for a moment that, what did the T-Rex sound like? You're standing face to face with the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Your brain, trained by decades of dinosaur movies, immediately supplies you with a sound. You're expecting the T-Rex to unleash a deafening roar, something loud enough to shake trees, music rattle bones, and justify a dramatic close-up of someone running in slow motion. Now take that sound and throw it away. It's another of Hollywood's lies. The shocking truth is that Tyrannosaurus rex almost certainly did not roar like it does in the movies, not even close. In films like Jurassic Park, sound designers stitched together noises from lions, music tigers, elephants, dolphins, donkeys, and even koalas. The iconic music T-Rex roar in Jurassic Park is a mix of bizarre sounds. From a baby elephant squealing to a whale's blowhole, the result is unforgettable, groaning, but also biologically nonsense. Tyrannosaurus was not a mammal. It didn't have mammal vocal equipment. Borrowing mammal noises to voice a dinosaur is like using a chainsaw sound effect for a violin. So then what did T-Rex actually sound like? That question bothered paleontologist and evolutionary biologist Julia Clark. It kept her up at night, gnawing at her until she finally decided music to tackle the problem head-on. But how? Julie realized that if she couldn't hear dinosaurs directly, the next best thing was to study their closest living relatives. And while chickens are usually labeled the closest relatives of T-Rex, they aren't alone. Crocodiles and alligators also share a common ancestor with Tyrannosaurus, music rex. That makes crocs one of the best modern stand-ins for understanding how large theropod might have produced sound millions of years ago. Plus, crocodiles have been around for millions of years, so their sounds likely haven't changed much. Do you know what a crocodile sounds like? If you haven't heard it in person, it is deeply unsettling. They look you dead in the eye and growl with their mouths closed. It produces a sound that sends chills down your spine and through your soul. Crocodilians produce low-frequency sounds by forcing air through their vocal system while keeping their jaws shut. The vibrations, music, travel through their bodies and into the environment, rippling the surface of the water. You can try a safe version of this yourself. Close your mouth, tighten your lips, and start humming. See? Do you feel that buzzing in your face and your chest? Now imagine that sensation scaled up to an animal that could fight Godzilla. Suddenly, you've got a noise that quakes your bones. That is probably how Tyrannosaurus growled. Big animals make deep sounds. The larger the animal, the lower the frequency. At Tyrannosaurus's size, those sounds would have dropped into infrasound, frequencies so low that human ears can't hear them at all. That means you wouldn't even hear a T-Rex, but you would feel it. When a modern alligator growls, music. Water ripples and dances along its back. The fossil belonged to Vega Ayi, an ancient bird that lived at the same time as the Tyrannosaurus rex. Lo and behold, it came with a preserved sur. When researchers studied the fossil, they were able to infer what sounds Veus likely made. It sounded like a duck or a goose, but more importantly, music. The discovery proved beyond any doubt that complex bird-like vocal organs existed during the age of the dinosaurs. To reconstruct what a T-Rex's grumbling might have sounded like, Clark combined recordings from animals that share deep evolutionary roots with dinosaurs. She used sounds from a Eurasian bit and a Chinese crocodile, both of which descend from aerosaurs. The result is a deep, resonant, otherworldly sound that feels more like pressure than noise. It's less a sound a movie monster makes and more like an approaching natural disaster. While amazing, this might not be the whole story. There is still the bird side of the family tree. Birds are dinosaurs too. Not metaphorically, literally. They are living descendants of theropod dinosaurs, which means they offer us another window into prehistoric sound. If T-Rex didn't grumble like an angry crocodile, perhaps it chirped like a bird. There's even an easy way to confirm it. Humans use a larynx to make a noise. It's an organ located in the neck where vocal cords vibrate as air passes through it. The larynx is almost like having a guitar in your throat. Birds, on the other hand, do not have a larynx. Instead, they have a serin, which is a vocal organ buried deep in the chest where the trachea splits towards the lungs. The siren is an engineering marvel. Its position, music, and structure allow birds to make powerful, complex sounds, sometimes even producing multiple notes at once. That is how a tiny bird can outsing a much larger animal. The question is whether or not dinosaurs had a syrinx, music, too. Because if they did, then dinosaurs could sing. If they didn't, then they could only grumble like cranky lizards. Music. Normally, scientists would have no way of knowing. The sur is made mostly of cartilage and soft tissue, which almost never fossilizes, but science occasionally gets lucky. Julia Clerk herself discovered music, an extraordinarily rare fossil, while on a hunt in Antarctica. It still doesn't prove that Tyrannosaurus had a serin, music, but it is plausible. Either way, T-Rex chirped or grumbled, but definitely did not roar. The secret dinosaurs of the secret dinosaurs of the snow. We usually think of dinosaurs living in the steamy jungle, but what about the dinosaurs who lived in the music snow? There is now overwhelming evidence that some dinosaurs lived far to the north in places, music, that experienced long dark winters, freezing temperatures, and months without sunlight. I'm not talking about dinosaurs who lived in places where it just snowed. These were dinosaurs who lived in a world where every day was a whiteout, and they thrived in the snowy tundra. They nested, raised babies, music, and endured conditions that feel deeply incompatible with the word dinosaur. I know some of you might not believe me, but dinosaurs lived practically at the North Pole. In 2021, music paleontologist Pat Drain Miller found himself standing beside the Colville River in northern Alaska, staring up at a frozen cliff face under a grim winter sky. There were no roads, there was no Wi-Fi, there wasn't even a Dunkin' Donuts. Pat and his team had traveled to the site by snowmobile. That's how in the middle of nowhere they were, because that is where you find the best dinosaur bones. In places where the temperature hovers around -20 degrees Fahrenheit, Arctic winds cut through clothing, and polar bears were a real concern for the researchers. You know what else was a real concern? Freezing to death. Each tent and camp had its own wood-burning stove because frostbite was an ongoing threat. Oh, and the other ongoing threat was the random rock falls that could crush a man flat just like Coyote. Thankfully, the team didn't freeze, get crushed, or eaten by bears. High up in the cliff, about 50 feet above the river, Pat spotted a thin layer of clay and sand only about 4 inches thick. It didn't look very dramatic or impressive, and it didn't really look like something I would personally risk my fingers for. But what the heck do I know? That layer of clay and sand ended up being one of the most important dinosaur layers in Alaska. That narrow seam contained tiny bones and teeth only millimeters across. Those teeth belong to baby dinosaurs. And there's nothing cuter than baby dinosaurs. Sadly, some of these little scaly tykes never hatched. Some died shortly after they hatched. What Pat stumbled upon was likely a dinosaur nursery. It was a place where thousands of dinosaurs nested together to give birth in safety 73 million years ago. And music. They did it at a latitude that offers several months of darkness each year. The sun literally does not rise for extended periods of time. I don't know how they did it, but the polar dinosaurs lived long, full lives in the dark and cold. Pat's discovery of baby dinosaur teeth isn't even the first time that someone has found proof of polar dinos. In 1961, an oil company geologist named Robert Liscombe was mapping the Coveville River when he noticed music bones sticking out of the cliff. He assumed they were mammal remains. He collected them and put them in storage. And then, guess what happened? He, Music, was killed in a rockfall. It was a terrible tragedy, with stones crushing Robert's hopes, dreams, and skeleton too. After his untimely demise, the bones he found at the Coveville River sat forgotten in a drawer for decades. Meanwhile, dinosaur music evidence began turning up in other polar locations, including footprints on islands in the Arctic. In 1984, scientists discovered dinosaur skin impressions and tracks along the same stretch of the Coveville River where Robert found the bones. It was enough for scientists to go and retrieve Robert's forgotten bones and re-examine them. Sure enough, they were dinosaurs. At first, the idea caused serious music discomfort among the scientific community. Cold-blooded reptiles living this far north made no sense. Some scientists, Music, suggested the dinosaurs only came north during summer, migrating thousands of miles south for winter like oversized Arctic terns. It was a neat explanation, but with Pat's discovery of thousands of baby dinosaur teeth, that explanation is officially wrong. The Coveville River outcrops turned out to be overflowing with dinosaur fossils. Music. More dino fossils have been found in the river's cliffs than anywhere else in the Arctic or Antarctic, and the whole gang was there. Scientists found the bones of adults, juveniles, and babies from all kinds of different species. There were duck-billed hadrosaurs, relatives of Triceratops, and even a tyrannosaur about the size of a walrus. These dinosaurs were not seasonal to tourists. Music. They were year-round Arctic residents, so how did they survive? It depends which dinosaur you were. Thanks to the oodles of plants and ferns, Hadrosaurus probably had music and easy time grazing even in the dark. Meanwhile, a polar tyrannosaur called Nanuchorus, who might just be my new favorite dinosaur, was likely feathered, looking a lot more like a murderous penguin than a stubby, music-armed T-Rex. Other dinosaurs may have developed other behaviors suited to the cold to help them survive. Drayan Miller suspects that some smaller plant eaters may have burrowed and possibly hibernated during the winter. So now you know dinosaurs lived across the entire globe. They lived in swamps, mountains, coasts, music, and they lived in the North freaking Pole. Pretty cool, huh? What's your favorite fun fact about dinosaurs? Please share in the comments, and thanks for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you'd like to see a part 2, and be sure to subscribe. See you later. Bye.